Morning, everyone. I'm here with Eric Law, who's been a great mentor of mine for the last dozen years or so. He's a Cherbourg man. He's also a St Joey's teacher, one of Queensland's first Aboriginal teachers. He's also the chair of the Queensland Aboriginal Catholic Education Committee. He's held many prestigious and prominent roles down through the years. But Eric, can you just tell us, for now, what's your role now with Catholic education and at St Joey's?
Well, the first role, Marcus, with the Queensland Aboriginal Catholic Education Committee is that we have 5 dioceses in Queensland, and each of them have an Aboriginal group that's connected to each of the dioceses. And from a statewide, we bring the 5 dioceses together, and I chair that group.
Okay, and in chairing that group, what sort of, do they bring in policies for Catholic education? Or?
Yeah, we're looking at how Catholic education impacts on Indigenous children, Indigenous communities, and how we can best look after the Indigenous children that are within our Catholic system.
And how do you believe Catholic education differs from the state system?
Well, I think the major difference is very much in the spirituality that we offer in the Catholic system, and we do that very well. Mm-hmm. And I think especially our Indigenous children seem to react a lot strongly to that. I suppose I was a bit apprehensive at the start, where I thought they might just deem this as being sort of religious and not want to take part of it. But again, it's like everything. It's how you offer it to children, I think, and I think through most of the Catholic systems that I've been, it's been offered quite positively.
Mm-hmm. And as a young man yourself, growing up in Cherbourg, was education important to you as well?
Oh, very much so, Marcus. I was only just thinking over the last couple of years or so. The big telling influence to me was my father, who was a World War I veteran. And I think the thing with Dad was he went over to World War I. I think he saw what was on the other side of the mountain, and he was really convinced from an early stage that education was the way to go.
And was he an educated man himself, or?
Not academically.
Mm-hmm.
I think back in those days, and my dad was born in 1898, so back in those days, education, I suppose, especially for Indigenous people, wasn't a very high priority. Mm-hmm. But I think my dad, through his family and my grandfather and grandmother, was very much committed to having some form of education. Mm-hmm. And in my dad's case, it was just getting out and getting a job and keeping the job.
So, and I believe all your siblings, you had eight siblings, was that right? And
yeah, eight out of the 12 of my brothers and sisters have all got university qualifications. Mm-hmm. So I think that's something my dad and mum would have been very proud of.
Mm-hmm. And I guess as a young man, you were pretty good at footy and things like that. Did you, growing up, did you think I want to be a footballer, or I want to be a teacher or a doctor or anything like that, or did it just come to you?
I probably wanted to be a teacher more so than being a football player. Although if the money was around today, as a footballer, I would have probably changed my mind and become a football player. But the reason I became a teacher, and there's a good story about this, was a Torres Strait Island man was sent down to Cherbourg in the Second World War. And he really was my role model to become a teacher. I used to see him every day, dressed immaculately in black pair of trousers, white shirt, a black tie in those days, and always reminded me of Sidney Poitier and To Serve with Love. And just talking to the man and just watching him and how he conducted himself, I just said at an early age, that's what I want to be.
Mm-hmm. And after school, you went to Mergen State High School?
Yeah, I went to Mergen State High School to grade 12, yeah.
Okay, and did you want to go to university then, or did you do other things? Or?
Well, at that time, I'd went to grade 12, and back in those days, we didn't have OP scores. We were all just sat for a senior exam and whatever. And back in those days, job-wise, there was a lot of jobs around, especially locally. And but I decided I wanted to follow my dad and join the army. And that's where I ended up.
And that took you to Vietnam, I believe.
Yes, it did. And I suppose I only reflected back last week for Anzac Day with the impact of that little journey, and every now and then I think back and wonder just how we survived. I mean, there was a fair few of us from Cherbourg in Vietnam, and looking back on it, I don't regret that decision.
Yeah. So how did you get into, what was the pathway from Vietnam into teaching?
Well, when I left the army, there was an offer to, they wanted to set up a program at Townsville CAE at those days, which was now James Cook University. And this is where they wanted to train Aboriginal people to become teachers. So the army let me go so that I can follow that. Okay,
so, and was that, were you excited about that? Were you nervous about going to university, Eric?
No, I was more excited than nervous, because if I wouldn't have went away to war again and seen what the value of education, even in the midst of all the tragedies of war, I probably would have been a little bit more scared about going, but I was more excited about going.
Okay, and how old were you then, Eric?
Oh, goodness, 23, 24.
Okay, so, and were you a married man at the time?
Yes.
Right, so you had a family, responsibilities.
Yep.
To me, there's often, especially when you're going to university without a wage, there's the opportunity to make a lot of excuses for not taking that step, even if you want to. What do you think drove you? I mean, was Shirley, your wife, a great supporter, or?
Oh, yeah, she's always has been, and particularly in the early days. But the other good thing about it was I was also playing football up in Townsville, and I was getting paid that as well as getting some help from AB Study. Now, back in those days, AB Study even helped us with our married couples who were up there, gave them some extra assistance and whatever. And without that sort of assistance, I don't think I would have been able to, and doing the football as well, wouldn't have been able to succeed.
Found your way through. Okay, for listeners just tuning in, I'm here with Cherbourg man Eric Law, who is a St Joe's teacher and the chair of the Queensland Aboriginal Catholic Education Committee, along with other many roles throughout his life. You've had a pretty prestigious career through not only teaching but public service and so forth. Can you give us a quick overview on that, Eric, as to where your education background, it starts small, but you just grow on from there?
Oh, look, no matter where I went, like I first started teaching here at Cherbourg in 1972, and no matter where I went and what I did, education was always part of it. I mean, I worked for the state government, the Commonwealth government, and in particular, one that I'm proud of with the state government was when I was working with Bob Catto when he was our Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, and one of the most significant things we did was change all of the legislation in Queensland so that we can have Aboriginal councils. And if it wasn't through Bob and myself and a couple of other people, that wouldn't have happened. But no matter where I went, like I was part of a National Aboriginal Education Committee, which was a direct advisor to the Commonwealth Minister for Education, and it was Susan Ryan at the time and John Dawkins. And then in the state, I was also the chairman of the Queensland Aboriginal Education Committee. And so no matter where I've been, I've always had a connection to education.
And as a boy growing up in Cherbourg, did you ever think you'd go to those heights? Like, you travelled overseas with government, and you've brought in policy which has changed people's lives and given Aboriginal people control over their own affairs and that type of thing. As a young fella, did you ever think that you would have that sort of impact? Or
no, mate, no. That probably the furthest thing from my mind. I mean, as a young man growing up here in Cherbourg, all I was worried about was, what I'm going to do on the weekend, or what sport I was going to play, and didn't have too many aspirations in those days.
So what do you say? What do you say to parents now and the children today? Because I guess what saddens me, Eric, is not all the parents, and this isn't just Aboriginal parents. This is parents in general. I grew up with a lot of people who didn't have an education culture, and those people, they're my age now, but geez, they're doing it tough. and I've enjoyed every job I've had as well. So, I mean, what would you say to...
Well, Marcus, I actually think you're on the right track about having that education culture. I can remember when I was growing up here at Cherbourg, you know, a lot of our parents and our grandparents weren't really that good educated in the true sense of academia, but they knew the value of education. They knew that having a good education could be something that could take you away from all the misery and put you into a good spot, in a good place. And I think there was that culture of education on this community. And I think that's what we need to get back, Marcus. We need to get back that culture of people valuing education. Because at the moment we can all say education is good, education is great, but we've got to do something about it. We just can't. We need to walk the talk, and not just talk about it.
And the best way to do that is to send your kids every day to school, every day on time. Yeah.
Yeah, but as well as that, Marcus, you know, with our parents and that, you know, like you know, take an interest in your kids' education. Every time I talk to my parents, they say, "Oh, you know, I didn't go very far in school. You know, I probably only went to about grade 9 or grade 10." But I always remind them that they're probably still a lot smarter than their children now, even with the new technology. And they're going to be able to share that. And I think the important thing that our parents got to realise is that they are their children's first teachers. And they're the ones who their children look up to. And they model themselves on them.
I guess it's taking those little moments of time to, you know, show your young children a bug or read them a book or whatever, yeah?
Exactly. And, you know, sometimes, and, you know, this is realities of life, you know, like... we don't have books in our homes, and but I noticed with your little library that's going around, the mobile library, that's a great idea. We used to have a library here in Cherbourg, which used to be all alongside us here, and people used to come down and they'd want to read. But I think we've got to be realistic too. In today's society, we've got a lot of competition. You know, we've got Facebook and all that sort of stuff going on, and I don't think people take the time and to read a lot of things.
So in the next 5, maybe 10 years, Eric, where would you like to see Cherbourg as on the education map as far as parents and children going to school?
Well, I'd like to see all of our children get as much out of education as they can, because I believe that's what education is all about. Education is to give you the tools to make the right sort of choices, the right options. So I think in about 5 or 10 years, I'd like to see more of our parents involved in our children's education, and not use an excuse that I haven't got a good education or I haven't got experience. But come along, be interested in what your child's doing. Now, not just be there for the bad part of it, but be there for the good parts about it as well. But I'd like to see in about 10 years' time where, you know, children out here at Cherbourg, if they're going to have a rating system, which is NAPLAN, are doing as well, if not better than anybody else.
All right. Thank you very much, Eric. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Marcus.